What was the wildest way you found out you were being cheated on? Story 1. She demanded to read all the messages on my phone. I said no problem, but only if I could read the messages on hers. She had forgotten to delete a message from a guy saying all we ever do is F. Can't we hang out sometime? There was nothing on my phone. Story 2. Date night cancelled day out. I decided to make it a guy's night to see the new Marvel movie. At the time, as we entered, I saw her sitting at the theater snuggling up with a guy. Our seats were a few rows back, saw them kiss a couple times. When we all left at the end of the movie, they were exiting their aisle as we walked down the stairs. She absolutely froze when she saw me. Blocked her on everything while I'm in parking lot. Story 3. On my birthday I was with my GF and I passed out early, since I had a long-ass shift that day and I had to drive 2 hours to get to her place. Woke up in the middle of the night, went outside to get a smoke. Saw her ex in his car on the parking lot. How did she react when she saw you? First she was like a deer in headlights, as was I basically as well. Then she started to cry and apologizing profoundly as I was packing my shit and leaving. Told me that it was a mistake, she loves me, and that he got her some food and one thing lead to another. Told her that's a very interesting way of showing her love to me. On my birthday. Story 4. My entire friend group knew about it, and I only found out after the one real homie blackmailed her into admitting it, and when she did, it was the most insincere shit ever. It's no big deal, everyone else thinks it's okay, and stuff like that. Suffice to say, I got my ass out of that relationship and friendship group real quick. Story 5. Went on a 2-week holiday, and when I returned, he was acting really strange. I tried to ask him what was wrong and why he was acting off. He started an argument with me, told me I was too young and insecure, asked me to leave, didn't want to see me again. I left sobbing, totally confused. 9 months later I see him walking through the city with his ex and a newborn baby. Now I understand. I was 18 and he was older, so of course I was smitten. It stung at the time, but I got over it. It's a funny story I tell at the bar every now and then. He did me such a favor. I'd have probably got stuck in my hometown if I'd stayed with him. Life is so short. Throw yourself at it and appreciate every feeling you get. Story 6. My 9-year-old son told me that there were strange men in the house. When I was away working, she'd been at it for years. It's horrible to deal with at the time, but honestly, it's such a relief to be rid of such a toxic mess. Story 7. Broke up with me, and as I was going though deleting her socials, I noticed a post she made on her Snap story that was her, and a guy with a post saying with my king. Post was made 2 hours ago and had only broke up an hour ago. Story 8. He sent me a pic of the dog while I was away with a text that said, "Look how cute she looks." Like 3 weeks later I went back to the photo to show a friend, and upon looking at the photo again I noticed a pair of women's boots in the background by the door. Similar story. I drove by his house in the early evening unannounced, as I'd left a coat there I wanted to wear. He answered the door in just his boxers, and I could just tell by his face something was up. Then I spotted women's shoes in the hallway behind him, and knew immediately they belonged to the girl he told me not to worry about. Story 9. Not really wild, but my ex-wife and I owned a small business together. One day I noticed a strange email address on the office computer, her first name and a different last name. I realized that email was still logged in, so I took a peek. I found 2 years worth of emails between my ex and some dude she dated before me. So I printed out every email and had it bound in a binder, ready to present to my divorce lawyer. Story 10. My fire alarm woke me up when it was low on batteries at 5 a.m. and thought it was strange that my GF wasn't home yet. She was out drinking with her friend. I tried to call her, but she didn't answer. That's when I remembered that we had the friend's spare key. She lived like next house, so I went to check, and my GF was sleeping in her friend's bed with some guy. If the fire alarm didn't woke me, I think I wouldn't have ever known. Story 11. Came home off a deployment. Now ex-wife was acting really weird, but I figured it was because I had been gone for a year, and everything was just taking time to get reacquainted. About 3 days after I returned, I had a notice from my unit stating my vehicle had 3 tickets at another base. We were in Germany a few hours away. In the past few months, when I went in to find out what the deal was, all 3 had photos attached to them for speeding through a checkpoint. All 3 had my wife and some other guy. She was kissing him in the 3rd pic. He was driving my car. Story 12. I was out at a bar with some friends. When I started talking to the people next to me, they were wearing our town's local social sports club shirt. So I asked them if they knew my wife who was in the club. They responded with, "Yeah, I know her. I hear she is cheating on her douchebag husband." I then reply, "I'm her husband," and ran out the bar crying. Story 13. Had one of those catching up phone calls with a girl I used to be good friends with. Told her all about my girlfriend during the conversation. The next day, I'm supposed to see my girlfriend and she cancels on me. No big deal. A couple hours later, my old friend starts texting me, asking me questions about my girlfriend. She ends up telling me she's pretty sure my girlfriend is in the back seat of a car with her, and that my girl's been all over her boyfriend's brother, and they're all on their way to the movies now. I try calling her and texting to confront her. She calls me back and breaks up with me. The cherry on top is my girlfriend and I work together, and the guy she's cheating with is my manager. She ends up quitting not long after. But I have to work with this guy for another year before I change jobs. Lol. Story 14. I was out with this girl I'd been with a few months. Went to a nice restaurant for dinner, and stopped at a local dive later to hang with mutual friends and co-workers. I went into the men's room later to see her legs under a stall and heard a co-worker's voice saying naughty things. Left the bathroom. Went directly to bartender and had her split our check and paid mine and bounced like F Tigger. Game over. Story 15. He told on himself. He randomly called me saying why message his ex, and I was super confused because I never did and told him it's a misunderstanding. I can reach out to her to explain it's not me. He got super defensive and threatened if I reached out to her. We're done. I found it odd and reached out to clear my name and she spilled saying he's been cheating on me as well as playing her and multiple other girls all at the same time. Turns out one of the girls made a fake account of me and reached out to her. Never found out who it was, but this is the one time. I'm glad having a stalker worked in my favor, otherwise I would have never known. Haha. Story 16. Too recent to relive, but here's how it went. Got a random text on Insta asking if I'm up, and new ex responded saying yes. She literally replied saying congrats. Your girlfriend is sleeping with my boyfriend, followed by barrage of screenshots she had gotten from her boyfriend's phone. Story 17. I was visiting a dying relative in hospital, so could not attend some stupid college party he and his roommate organized. I told him I couldn't go and asked him if he could come over later, after visiting ours in the hospital, because I knew my relative would die soon, and I really just needed someone to be there with me. He said he probably wouldn't be able to, as he needed to help his roommate with party preparations, but would come over later if they finish early. Next day I saw pictures of him with his ex in his lap kissing, uploaded the previous night by his roommate. The roommate even knew we were dating. He was just too drunk to realize he added me as a friend a week earlier on Facebook, and I would see the pictures. Story 18. My colleague had an elaborate wedding cathedral ceremony. Hundreds of guests to a guy she'd been with for years. She found out shortly afterwards he'd been cheating because they met this girl who was his colleague and gym buddy when they were walking in the park, and their two French bulldogs who were noisy and protective didn't bark at her at all. There was no reason for her to have met the dogs before, as she had never been to their house to her knowledge. So she snooped on his phone while he was asleep, and apparently he had been cheating for over a year, and she was pregnant, and they were opening a business together, and he was leaving as soon as he had the whole thing set up. When the dust settled, the only thing she was pissed off about was the expense they and her parents had spent on the wedding. He could have called the whole thing off and saved thousands. She didn't learn though. Her second wedding was nearly as elaborate. Story 19. She basically moved him into our house. She told me it was to monitor him because he was depressed and needed help. Apparently tried to off himself by swallowing a bedsheet. I then realized that the whole depressed and needs helpline was what she would use over any guy she was being suspicious with, like the one guy that she had history with, who made a move on her while we were together, and kept coming back into her life when he was depressed, or the guy mentioned in the shredded note I found in her nightstand, talking about how she wanted to run away with him and get a surprise divorce, or the guy that she had this weird fixation with role-playing Khaleesi, and called Drogo with an online chats. All depressed, all needed her help. Once it clicked, I was done. Story 20. We broke up and then her best friend and best friend's husband told me that night she'd been af a few different people but settled on one. They got married, had kids. Then she cheated on him with me one night years later. I didn't know they were together. They divorced, she remarried, got divorced, and now she is on husband number 3. My favorite part is she portrays herself as an amazing Christian woman that is better than everyone because she is so Christian.